Hello YouTube, and welcome to the Educated Barbarian Part 5 focused on the Enchiridion. Last week I left you with a very strong message concerning the making of money and the place that the entity should have in your life, understanding that it's not an evil per se, but that letting it possess you and force you to do certain things that are against your principles will eventually become a negative force that is going to rob you of your own identity. Today, we're going to go down into what Epictetus believes is important in terms of desires, in terms of the relationship that the man or the woman has with the state, the relationship that you should have with external entities, and how you need to balance a life that is going to be lived for you with a life that is going to be also of use to the community, so that you are actually an asset and not just something that exists on the side. Because at the end of the day, the goal of philosophy is to make you a better person for yourself, but also for others. It is enough if every man fully discharges the work that is his own. And if you provided it with another citizen faithful and modest, would you not be useful to it? Yes. But if then, when you wish to be useful to the state, you shall lose these qualities, what profit could you be to it if you were made shameless and faithless? So this is actually the continuation of the quote from last week about money, which is why I wanted to remind you of it. Because interestingly enough, the abusive pursuit of money leads to you becoming a worse citizen. And that shines an interesting light to today, because we have a lot of people that some people call the 1% that have done exactly that. Well, they have pursued money to the point where they are now a statistical anomaly. They exist as something that is untouchable. They're so much richer than the average person. And interestingly enough, a lot of the time when people point the finger at these individuals, it's out of envy, meaning that they don't really have a philosophical message attached to it. They don't really know why they attack that person. Well, the answer is very simple. They attack that person because they wish they were that person. And that is when you run into an issue. There is a much more interesting discussion to be had, and the discussion is summed up here. If you end up being someone who is going to shamelessly pursue your own interests, then at some point, the qualities that has led you to becoming super rich, for example, also make you an enemy of the state, because you are now pursuing your own interests and you're never looking at the best interest of the people. And you could have a very simple answer to that and say that this is not your problem, and at the end of the day, you live for yourself, right? So you should pursue the maximum amount of wealth for yourself and screw other people. That is correct to an extent, but if you understand that your goal should also be to help society further itself, then you also understand that this viewpoint is, at the end of the day, a little bit stupid, because you're going to end up on a pile of gold surrounded by ashes. And at this point, your gold also is worthless. It's the paradox of money. Money has value because people give it. The day people start not paying attention to money, liquid assets, how big your bank account is the day money is going to lose its value. Because money is based on the social contract, and only on the social contract. It's the reason why also even things like gold that still you could argue had a physical value attached to it have lost their power and their weight, and now our currency is mostly based on digital numbers. And digital numbers mean nothing. They only mean something because we accept that they do. That's it. So pay attention to that. Don't become corrupted by an entity that at the end of the day is just not really there. Since also, if you wish to be useful to the state, aka your co-citizens, then you should make sure that you never lose the qualities that you will lose if profit becomes everything that you try to achieve. And as you said, if you're asking, okay, so if that's a bad citizen, then what is a good citizen? A good citizen is someone who discharges the work that is his own. And that's it. Just do your best. I know that it can be a little bit daunting to think that, okay, I have to be a good neighbor, I have to be a good dad, a good son, etc. And at some point you get lost and you look around and you think, I'm surrounded by so many people in society, how can I be good to every one of them? Well, you can't, that's the trap. Before you start expanding and trying to help others, help yourself first. Discharge your own work, be diligent, be a hard worker. I have found that the most excellent citizens I know are people who do that. They take care of themselves, then their immediate family, friends, and community. They don't really worry about helping the entire country, and by default, they do, because they take care of what is important. This one is funny. What is the price of lettuce? An obolus, perhaps. If then a man gives up the obolus and receives the lettuce, and if you do not give up the obolus and do not obtain the lettuce, do not suppose that you receive less than he who has got the lettuce. For as he has the lettuce, so you have the obolus, which you did not give. This is a message towards envy. It's a message towards people who believe that they are entitled or who believe that they are deserving. I hear that word. I hear that word used a lot, especially on YouTube. Oh, you deserve this. I deserve this. Blah blah blah. Let me be clear. No one deserves anything. The very idea and concept of deserving something is completely unnatural because it's basing the entire concept of the receiving of gifts on the idea that some people are karmically more just to receive said gifts. And this is going to make you incredibly miserable in life because you're going to perpetually think you deserve more and more, and you're going to get less and less. And it's going to make you think that you are being mistreated. But mistreated by who? By God. If there is a God, he doesn't care about you, and he's not the one who's actually upholding a certain part of a bargain regarding gifts. Gifts that you receive were placed there by your own work. All right, luck plays a role in this, but the issue is that in the entire verbiage and semantics of deserving something, luck is not involved. Because when you say I deserve something, you're saying that your hard work and hard work alone makes you a worthy recipient of said thing. And I'm going to say that very logically, if you think about it this way, then a simple equation shows to you that you are not worthy. Because if you are deserving, but you didn't get the thing, guess what? It meant that you didn't deserve it. It's very simple. Because if you had deserved it, you would have gotten it. Easy. Apply this in your life. Stop saying that you deserve things. You deserve absolutely nothing. No one in this life deserves anything. You get what you work for, and that's it. The rest is just conjunctures. It's going to just make you daydream all day about things you wish you had that you don't have and that you'll never have because you are constantly in a victim mindset. So you have to kick yourself out of it. And I think that this example of the lettuce is very interesting because I feel a kinship with Epictetus because I sort of do the same thing that he does. When I have a concept to explain, but the concept appears very simple to me, I tend to be a little sardonic with my words, and I tend to pick an example that you could hear in second grade so that I make it clear and plain that it is actually a concept that should be easy to grasp, and therefore I'm going to make it as easy as possible. He does the same here. He's basically telling you, okay, you're jealous because someone else has a lettuce and you don't. First off, that person paid for the lettuce. So it didn't just fall out of the sky, it was a clear exchange of services. They paid for the lettuce. Okay. Now, what about you? You are now upset because he has a lettuce and you don't. Well, guess what? This means two things. Either you have the money to pay for the lettuce, and therefore, why don't you just pay it? In which case, it could mean that you are too lazy to pay it because the paying of the lettuce represents hard work in this metaphor. Or you don't have the obolus, and therefore, why are you even complaining? You don't have the prerequisite to acquire the lettuce. It's very simple, it's very easy to understand, but it will help you not be envious. Envy is, in my opinion, a feeling that you need to banish from your life because it has no positive upsides. It's never helpful, ever. The only time it's helpful is if it stirs you towards working, aka you see someone get the lettuce and you think, okay, I'm going to obtain the obolus to pay for the lettuce. That is good. But if you just go, oh, he has the lettuce, not me, it's not fair. That's the problem. You're going to say, oh, I deserve the lettuce. And Epictetus will tell you, No, you don't, because you didn't pay for it. And he continues, because as I said, there's a kinship here, right? Epictetus pokes you a little bit. He tells you, hey, you're stupid, here's why. And then when you go, oh, but blah, 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 he like speaks you a little bit more, he stabs you, and he's like, no, listen up. You are stupid. He says, if you wish both not to give the price and to obtain the things, you are insatiable and silly. And he is right. People who see results fail to understand that there was a price attached to it, then complain they don't have the results, are insatiable because they constantly want more without putting in the price, which is not possible, because a natural mechanism that prevents humans from being too greedy is that to get the object of your greed, you need to put in the work, and the work that you put in is going to be correlated with effort and time, meaning that there is a finite amount that you can put in, meaning that there's only a finite amount that you can receive, and therefore you cannot accumulate too much because it just doesn't make any sense logically. You just don't have the work capacity to do that. So you're insatiable. And on top of that, you're silly because you're insatiable based on things you don't have. And you don't understand why you don't have it, meaning you'll never have it. Dangerous mindset to fall into. This is a mindset I know people who are in their 30s and 40s have. And you could call them haters. Those are the people who point out the finger and say, oh, he has this, and I should have it. Why does he have it? This very sentence shows that they fail to understand why certain people have things. No one has things just by mistake. Even someone who just inherited their wealth. Okay, you can say that they're lucky, but at the end of the day, I can trace back the origin of that wealth. So it's not just random. They might be lucky to inherit it, but at some point, one of their ancestors paid the obolus. And now they have a ton of lettuce because at some point, someone did the work. It's up to you to be that guy. You could be the guy that in 500 years is going to give birth to a massive empire. Why? You paid the obolus today, aka get to work and stop complaining. Is another man's child or wife dead? There is no one who would not say, this is an event incident to man. But when a man's own child or wife is dead, forthwith he calls out, woe to me, how wretched I am. But we ought to remember how we feel when we hear that it has happened to others. A message of empathy, a message of logic. It's very easy when someone else is in trouble to rationalize it and be logical. I know a ton of people like this who are able to utilize their best mind and cognitive abilities only when they themselves are not in turmoil. Meaning that they have an easy time pointing the finger at someone on fire and saying, yes, this person is on fire and they're on fire because X or Y. But when they're on fire, suddenly they don't know how to think anymore and they'll find a reason to explain why it's not their fault that they're on fire. Don't be that person. La philosophie à deux vitesses is a concept that is very interesting because it's prevalent in the modern world. It's people who apply certain principles of philosophy to others and themselves in situations where it's convenient, but the second it stops being convenient, they stop doing that. Stoicism is I think, the best example of that. So many people call themselves Stoic, but then someone makes them mad and they behave like baboons. You can't be a Stoic only 2 hours a day. You're a Stoic all the time. It's the point of the philosophy, is that it makes your life better when you apply the principles all of the time. And the easiest way to do that is just to apply yourself. But here, the important part also is that as you understand that you need to put yourself in the shoes of the person, it does not mean that you're going to let yourself be affected emotionally when it happens to someone else or someone else or you. It means that you are going to retain a cold head regardless of who is affected. So you lose your wife, it's going to hurt. But logically, you need to be able to tell yourself, as he does here, this is an event incident to man. It's life. Yes, it's terrible. Yes, it's going to break your heart for 5 years. But it's life. And being able to tell yourself that is going to help you move forward. If you constantly tell yourself, why me? Why was I punished by the God? First off, you are a little bit silly, as he says previously, because you're not the one who died. That's the entire thing with mourning someone. We are mourning them because we are not having them in our life anymore. This is what we're mourning, it's their absence. And it's normal, we're humans, it's beautiful. But don't let yourself be kid. Kid. Don't let yourself be kid or be a kid. Understand that you're not doing that for their sake, they're dead. It doesn't matter. You don't go to their thumb, I don't know how to speak today, their tomb, or the cemetery, whatever, for them. You do it for yourself. And knowing that you do it for yourself is going to help you heal. It helps the healing process to a great extent. This one is important because it's talking about the perception of evil. I think that a lot of people are going to read the Enchiridion and not understand the correlation between the existence of God and the absence of evil, because a lot of religions have both concepts cohabit. Because if you have an absolute good, you need an absolute bad to balance it. And unlike religions of old, where they had multiple gods, and therefore they could assign good and bad traits to all gods, in a fashion that is much more refined and gray than most people think. Like a lot of people, for example, think that Hades was evil, like in the Greek pantheon, but in reality he wasn't. He wasn't more evil than Zeus. He had evil traits, but they all had evil traits. That's the point. The problem, quote unquote, with the monotheist God is that they're all good, and therefore you need to find a figure that is going to represent evil. And in Christianity, for example, it's Satan, it's Lucifer, which is a discussion that is extremely important and interesting to have too, because Lucifer represents much more than evil. But here, what Epictetus thinks and the way he approaches things is he has decided that there is no such thing as evil. And here is how he explains it. As a mark is not set up for the purpose of missing the aim, so neither does the nature of evil exist in the world. All right. Two sentences, one sentence if you don't count the comma, but simple and yet one that could really give birth to an entire book. So what he says here is this. A mark is not set up for the purpose of missing the aim. What does it mean? It means that if you set up a mark, it's not to shoot next to the mark. You set up an area where you're going to aim, that you want to touch that. Okay. This means that when we actually transpose that to our life, the metaphor means that man could not have created to do evil deeds, because then it would mean that the creator in itself is evil, because the mark is not created just to miss the aim. So by default, we are not evil. There's no evil in man. Okay, so that's the premise. Does it mean that there's no evil whatsoever? No, because he says, neither does the nature of evil exist in the world. He doesn't say evil doesn't exist. He says the nature of evil. Again, what does it mean? It means that there was no intention on behalf of the creator, aka the void, aka chaos, whatever you want to call it, to make evil happen. It wasn't intended. And if we link it back to Lucifer, again, God didn't intend for humans to be evil. It was introduced. It's a concept that is foreign to God. And in retrospect, it's interesting because it means also that God is not fully in control. He's not omnipotent. But it's not that he's not omnipotent in a sense. It's that he accepted and he relinquished agency when he created us, if you admit and accept we were created by God, because he understood that there was a level of control he was going to relinquish for us to be able to actually be creatures. Because if not, we would just be extensions of him, puppets, but we were not. And then you have the entire story of the snake and the Garden of Eden, etc. Also the Garden of Edens, right? Because we betrayed our creator. But more interestingly, the very nature of evil was put into the earth even before that, because before the betrayal of man was the betrayal of the angels. Lucifer was sent to earth because he refused to bow down to humans. He refused to obey God. and he was therefore seen as evil. So what is evil? Evil is what is contrary to God. What is God? The order of nature. We go back to the book. So neither does the nature of evil exist in the world. So the nature of good exists, but the nature of evil doesn't, which means that in reality, evil exists, but it's what the nature of good fails to fulfill that is evil. So evil is a failure on the part of man to be good, and not its own thing. So I say all of that, and I'm just gushing because it's very interesting to me, but why is it important? Why would he insist on that? Why would Marcus Aurelius insist on that? Well, for one simple reason. It teaches you that any evil action you do was not a natural continuation of your nature. It was a perversion of your nature. And therefore, the need to avoid said perversion is made more extreme. If you accept that man is black and white, you cannot blame man for being black sometimes. But if you say that it is only white and that the black parts of his soul are just a deformation, then at this point it's much easier to point them out as being mistakes, as being something that does not need to be replicated, that needs to be fought. And that's the idea. It also preserves the creator and the source from being tarnished, because again, you cannot really claim, and even that is, I could argue against that. You cannot really claim that God gave birth to evil. It's an entity that was subjugated by God that gave birth to evil. But again, if we accept that God created the angels, he also created evil, it's a discussion that could go on forever. But for us, and for our case as linked with Stoicism, what it means also is that our very source and nature is not evil. And therefore, we should always, and we always, and that's my personal opinion, gravitate towards good. So the only moment you're going to be tempted by evil is when you are losing touch with your actual nature. And that should be reconforting. It should make you feel better. Because just like I have, you also do evil things. You do things you're not happy about. But you need to know that it's not you. You're not evil. The thing you did was evil. And since evil and the nature of evil itself does not exist in this world, then the very existence of the action doesn't need to exist. So you can push it away with confidence, knowing that this is not you. You shouldn't blame yourself for that. It's just something that in the future you have to be better about. And I'm going to leave you on those words. If you have any ideas and things you want to discuss more about that paragraph that is so interesting in my opinion, let me know in the comments and I will see you next week.